does it look like when the worlds of music and advocacy overlap? What happens if an artist wants to incorporate social good into their career? Those are the questions we're going to be answering on this brand new podcast. It's called It's Giving, and I'm your host, Ingela Travers-Hayward. This show is about what it looks like when an artist wants to use their platform for more than just entertainment. So I'll be interviewing a new musician each week about the causes that they care the most about. For our first ever episode, though, I wanted to start close to home and to let you get to know about the cause that I care the most about. To set the scene, my nonprofit, This Must Be the Place, started in an attempt to bring Narcan to the masses, and we used the music industry to get there. We started doing distribution at some of the biggest music festivals across the country, Lollapalooza, Bonnaroo, ACL, and now we've passed out hundreds of thousands. To help me tell this story is someone who has been there since day one, my co-director and, full disclosure, my husband, William Perry. Before starting this nonprofit, I spent years as a documentary producer. I was trying to bring unexpected stories to the forefront in hopes of inspiring people. And honestly, that's exactly what I'm trying to do with this podcast. You might be a super fan of some of the musicians I talk to, but I'm hoping that you're going to be inspired by learning about a side of their careers that you've never heard of before this in depth. I hope you enjoy the show. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or through our Substack, where I'm going to be sharing behind-the-scenes resources on the causes that our guest champion. I am so happy this series is finally out in the world. I am so proud of it. I'm thrilled, but also terrified to hear what you think. But please subscribe, and let's get right into it. Here's our first episode. Perry, thank you so much for appearing on the inaugural episode of It's Giving.
It's so nice to be here.
Full disclosure, everyone, Perry and I are actually sitting in the same room. I cajoled him into being the first guest on this podcast because I think while I'm going to be talking to my musicians primarily, I think it was important that you hear from us, hear about our nonprofit. And so I'm going to grill Perry with the same kinds of questions that you're going to hear from musicians week after week. So Perry, let's get right into it.
Here we go.
If you were to have to talk about what cause matters most to you, what would you say it would be?
You know, obviously, all of my work is centered around overdose prevention. And I think that it goes a lot deeper than that because, you know, as a former addict myself, I know that there are so many things that happen before someone gets to the point of overdose, even drug use at all, that can be mitigated either like through public health or just outright compassion towards one another. And, you know, and so I believe that harm reduction and outreach to the people who are most affected by issues of drug use and actually interactions between non-drug users and drug users is really the way to create a more compassionate atmosphere where people maybe get the help that they need or understand that, you know, these things exist on a spectrum, and because they exist on a spectrum, you can either go to all the way far to one side or the other. And sorry, I'm veering a little bit away from your question.
Don't worry. Listen. No, that's totally bad. But so you did say obviously you care about harm reduction. You know, if someone's hopefully listening to this episode and they've come to this through another musician that we're interviewing or something like that, and they don't know who we are, for someone who it's not obvious for, why do you care about overdose prevention?
You know, if I'm to sum it up in one sentence, it's because all of my friends are dead. That doesn't mean I don't have friends now, but all the friends that I grew up with are all gone, or a large majority. And, you know, I consider myself to be extremely lucky to not be off in another realm with them right now, because we all did the same things. We grew up together. We all traveled down the same path. I actually, unfortunately, I got there a lot sooner than a lot of other of my friends. Growing up in Ohio, this was just a way of life, especially as the very first waves of the opioid epidemic happened. I've watched people die right in front of me. I've had someone die in my arms. And I think a lot of that came from not knowing what to do, or being scared to try to go to the authorities and get some help. The authorities even just calling the ambulance. There's a whole lot that went into it, and there's also a whole lot of places that I can identify where, like, if one thing had just happened differently, my whole life would have ended up differently. And that goes for those who didn't make it out in the way that I did.
I'm sorry that, I'm making you talk about this stuff on a Sunday morning at 11:30. I know it's not the easiest thing, but I think, as I know, that has really shaped who you are, and I think, like, that directly ties into my next question, which is, obviously you are someone whose lived experience affects them every single day, right? It affects how you move through this world. I know that. People you go to school with know that. How did it affect your career for the last 5 years?
Well, it's really interesting because all I ever really wanted to do, after getting clean and after serving my 10-year sentence in prison, all I really wanted to do was be a recovery counselor and have, like, this happy existence, just helping clients one at a time. And, I got that job in a treatment center, and I was happy doing it. And there's so many success stories that I could tell you. God, I learned that I actually am a really good counselor because, yeah, I went to school and I learned a whole lot of, socioeconomic principles of why and how people get pushed into different lifestyles. But at the end of the day, the language that I speak, the way that I view problems that are presented in front of me come from that lens of all of the shit that I went through. And I somehow juxtapose those two things on top of each other, and it becomes really effective. However, like, within that, I began to feel this pull and this thing that was, like, pulling me to, yes, I can help people individually, which is something that I believe deeply. And, like, and honestly, like, even with all the work with the nonprofit, have intentionally never deviated away from that peer-to-peer, one-on-one conversational model. But I realized, like, I actually have something to give to the world, and it can happen on this macro level. And, like, that's not to just, like, hey, pat myself on the back here. It's a real, like, gravitational pull that I feel at all times. And that's just, like, led me to take these leaps that oftentimes I don't know what's going to be on the other end, and I might fall on my face, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
And people like me should try, and they should take those leaps, because what's the other alternative?
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking about taking a leap and not knowing what's on the other side, you referenced it, but a big part of what this podcast is revolves around the nonprofit you mentioned. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
The nonprofit. Well,
when you say the nonprofit, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about This Must Be the Place. The nonprofit that, I don't know why you let me pick the name.
No, it was because we had to fill out those tax forms and it was just staring at us and we had to pick something. It's really, really hard.
Well,
it works though.
Yeah. So you let me name it after one of my favorite songs, which David Byrne, thank you for not suing us for copyright infringement.
Thank you for holding up a kid in our
shout out to New York's most famous resident. Okay,
get back on it. What is This Must Be the Place?
Okay, anyway, sorry.
Oh my God.
You don't want to talk about bike. You don't want to talk about bike
now
paths
the polish
for a
is
while?
coming up. He was so polished for the first 10 minutes, and now, okay. Explain to me what This Must Be the Place is.
Okay, so it was this idea that we had.
Yeah.
And we were locked down. It was you and I.
Okay.
We were locked down, floating in a pool. on an extremely hot summer day during the middle of COVID. And, like we were talking about concerts because music is just so important. It's been, honestly, music's the only thing that got me through prison, was being able to stick these headphones on and listen to someone sing to me and think about things that just were not were not the awful situation that was right in front of me. Anyway, getting past all that, we were talking about music, and we were talking about, how we couldn't wait for concerts to start and to be able to go see these artists that all I had done is just listen to them through headphones and all of that. But at the same time, I had been working in a recovery center, and we were starting to see this interesting trend of people who were coming in saying, I've been using X substance, but I'm now going through opioid withdrawal. Or maybe they had been delivered there by an ambulance directly after a fentanyl overdose. And like our conversation somehow was like, hey, wait a second, there's going to be a lot of people who, when this stuff starts back up, when festivals and concerts start back up, they're going to want to party. They're going to want to make up for this lost time. And
there was also that New York Magazine article that we read that had such an impact on us.
Pride Month, 2021. There was fentanyl laced cocaine, and there were a bunch of deaths, and people were like, "What's going on?" And in my mind, I said, "Well, I know exactly what's going on because I see this every day when I go to work."
Yeah.
And it was just like, hey, what if someone was able to get there before the tragedy happens and hand out some Narcan? And so we had this silly idea of let's try to go to festivals and hand out Narcan. And, I'm a person who just has fleeting thoughts and ideas all the time, and then I forget about them and then go about my life. And I've been graced to be paired in life with someone who won't let go of those freaking ideas.
Do you think we should give people context on how we met? Should we delve into that? I suppose.
I mean, they could just watch an episode of Prison Wives.
Okay, I was not a prison wife. I make that very clear. I mean, listen, you're not the most succinct person in the world. So just to give the audience context, during COVID, I was sitting in my apartment in New York City, going a bit cuckoo because I was working in production, and obviously all production stopped. And so I thought, you know what, why not do some interviews, maybe figure something, some story out that could be a documentary down the line. And so for some reason, I settled on trying to interview as many people as I could that had family members in prisons in Ohio at that time, because that was where the biggest outbreak of COVID cases was in the country at the beginning.
And this is where I come in, because I was housed in one of the two prisons with the highest concentration of COVID cases in the country. I was actually 90 days away from my release when I caught COVID in March of 2020 and spent 5 days in the hospital. I was one of the first cases at that prison.
Patient zero.
Well, maybe 3, whatever. It's really kind of hard to tell. That time is a blur. Long story short, 44 of my fellow inmates died, which is really tragic. And 90 days away from completing 10 years, I was like, am I going to make it? But I did.
But you did. And yeah, it was a pretty wild case. My phone number eventually made its way from the families into the 2 prisons, and Perry was one of the people that I started talking to and learning about what was happening in there, which was crazy. And I think, the moral of the story is the documentary never came to be, but now Perry and I are married because when I went to do a research trip, we ended up meeting in person because he had been released from prison at that point. I was not a prison wife. And so, yeah, that the rest is history. But I think will
that be the title of this podcast?
No, it's called It's Giving. Remember, you came up with the title. I will give you that credit.
But I mean, within the under the It's Giving umbrella, Ingela is not a
prison wife. No, I don't think that's going to be a clickable title. No, but thank you though for that. I appreciate that. But I think, yeah, long story short, like you said, your fleeting ideas and my sort of militant producer ways that have yet to dissipate, even though I've worked at the nonprofit for the last 5 years, it sort of worked because we ended up getting the nonprofit off the ground in this really amazing way, I would say.
It took off like it's like we never imagined. We thought we would do a few festivals. We had some lofty ideas, which is why we pitched Burning Man in Bonnaroo before we had ever even done a festival.
Yeah. They can't say yes if you don't ask in the first place.
That's right. That's right. And after that first year, we were exhausted, bone tired, but like we started getting emails. Yeah. We started getting emails from other festivals, other promoters, who said, okay, you've made this a thing. We want it to be a thing at our festival.
Yeah.
And at that point, I guess like we looked at the schedules that we were being presented with, and like I said before, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
We took a leap and a path presented itself, and we had no choice but to follow that path.
Yeah.
And here we are 5 years later. We've passed out I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of kits of Narcan, trained likewise amount of people. Like I said, 1v1, peer-to-peer. We have people that come back year after year at repeat festivals and thank us and get a new kit, whether they've used their old one or not. But also we know that we've saved over 2,000 lives through our project. And man, that's some pretty cool shit.
Yeah.
For it to just be some lofty idea to like we made a dent in that overdose tally.
And I think it's really surreal because I think, what I tell people who come up to the booth and say, well, why did you start this? Do you have a personal connection to it? I often reference you because I say, when you were in full active use, Narcan wasn't this common thing that
Narcan was illegal
had.
when I was in active use. Narcan, like being in possession of Narcan would get you taken to jail.
Yeah. So crazy to think about.
And yeah, so we did I've done absurd things to reverse overdose, and I have a pretty good success rate.
What's the most absurd thing that you feel like you've done?
Probably tase someone.
Oh my God. Oh. Gee, wakey.
Scott woke right up.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a little stun gun. It wasn't like I was like putting whatever the police ones or whatever.
At least he's alive and he can get mad at you then,
Yeah, I think his roommates were more mad than he was, but that's another story for another day.
Yes.
Anyway, the fact that Narcan is legal and is able to be possessed, and people like us are able to give it out.
Yeah.
Like the Occam's razor outcome is, okay, let's get some, let's go do that thing.
Yeah.
And that's a lot harder than that sentence says, and we had to figure out some tricky ass shit to do it.
I think we always say we came up with the worst business model you could ever think of, taking this ludicrously expensive medication and wanting to give it away in mass quantities for free. Like, no one would advise to do that.
Spending sun up to sundown trying to figure out where the fuck I'm gonna find more Narcan. Whose back I'm gonna scratch, who's whatever. I've done worse things to get drugs, and for a lot worse reasons. But like, how are we gonna get it? And then how are we gonna get to a place and just give it away for free? Because saving someone else's life should not cost you $1.
No.
And like, whatever, call me a socialist, but like that's what I believe. I believe that people should have that agency, and everyone deserves tomorrow if that chance is to be given.
Yeah. But yeah, I think your story, and one of the reasons why I thought it was really important that this be the first episode is because it gives context to what it is we do. This wasn't just a cause that we passively cared about. This was one that has deeply affected you. And for me, it was like, how do I help you bring it to life in that way?
And like, yeah, we can go over like the genesis of the project, but like there's so much more that comes out of this. It's the butterfly effect, like there's so many tales of compassion and community that we've learned from it. And like as a person, look, I was 15 years old the first time that and I mean, this was a grown adult, a 25-year-old, injected heroin into my arm, and like little did I know that the next 20 years of my life would belong to that drug.
Yeah.
And throughout that, though, I was demonized.
Yeah.
I was demonized for a choice that I don't even, honestly, I don't even know if I made the choice, but I'd sure know I like did not have a fully developed critical thinking brain at that point in time. But like, and so I understand that like people come into drug use in a lot of different avenues, but like society has done this thing to like make it so it is this active choice, that you're making to ruin your life or something, and like, and that makes you isolate. And that makes you feel like an outcast. That makes you feel just so terrible about yourself. But you know what? Like, the drug is always there.
Yeah.
Even when society's not there for you, the drug is. So it actually pushes you further towards that drug, whatever the drug is. And what I've realized is on the opposite end of that is this compassion pulls you back into your family, back into your friend circle, back into seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. And I promise you, once you get out of that tunnel, it shines so bright. And, sorry to get on my soapbox here, but like, I mean, and I've been really fucking lucky with some shit that's happened since I've gotten out. Like the hand that I was dealt early in life was a loser.
Yeah.
And somehow by taking the steps that I have, like good things just keep happening. And, but I believe that is what awaits everyone. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that they have to like be fully sober or anything. That's my personal choice.
Yeah.
That's not what works for everyone. The real issue here is that you're not doing harm to yourself or others.
Yeah.
And that's what harm reduction is at its core.
Mm-hmm.
It's just making sure that harm's not being done, and that like you can live that optimal life that exists within all of us.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I do the work that I do, and and I'm grateful for you to make sure that I'm doing that shit even on days when I don't feel like it.
Yeah. And I think that's why I wanted to do this podcast, because yes, your story has completely informed how we run this nonprofit or why we do this nonprofit. But I think there are a lot of other people out there, and I'll be specifically talking to musicians at the beginning of this, to hear about why they want to talk about the causes that matter to them, because people don't just passively start nonprofits. People don't just passively decide to take a stand against something. People don't just passively, add money to a concert ticket through Plus One so that they can donate a bunch of money to a nonprofit at the end of their tour.
Can I push back on that for a second?
Oh my God. Okay.
No. It's just like people do passively stand for causes.
Okay, yes.
And I think that's a very, very good, big distinction to be made between like the people you're interviewing in this podcast and what separates them oftentimes from people with platforms, people in general. Because like, sure, like I could find a meme that says, fund reproductive rights, and post it on my Instagram, and or wear a t-shirt around or a button on my backpack or something like that, and like that's great, whatever. But like actually like going out and doing the thing, like
Yes.
getting your hands in it, like that's active.
Yes. And actually, you know what? I'm going to utter the worst sentence I ever could, which is, you're right. I think that the people.
Wait,
that,
can you
no,
just can
no,
can
this
you
is
say
already
it?
being recorded. You can
Could you
just
say it
replay this over and over
into
again.
the microphone?
No, but
it's
I
gonna
think
it's gonna be on your ringtone.
Oh God. But I think that, yeah, you're right. The people I'm talking to, the people I've been lucky enough to talk to so far, they're not just doing this because they feel like, whatever. Let me just do let me talk about the thing of the day and then go on with my life. Yeah, these are stories about, like yours, where something has happened to them that has made them care deeply about something, and here is what they do about it.
Yeah, and like it doesn't always have to be like this like immense, traumatic tragedy
No.
such as what's happened in my life. Like maybe they just saw something, or maybe they just had a conversation. You never know what that inciting moment's going to be in a person. And I think that's what you're here to figure out.
Well, yeah, and I think it's the kind of thing that so often gets relegated to this like footnote in another interview, right? And so maybe they're doing an interview and it's really fascinating. They're talking about their music and stuff like that. But then maybe advocacy is just, the last question, and then you kind of blow past it because music is the main reason that they're there to do the interview. But I think for me, but that advocacy is what's most interesting because, we've also been really lucky that a lot of musicians have been vocal about the importance of Narcan, and they have these really compelling reasons for why, and so I think it's just this element of their careers that you don't hear about that I'm really fascinated by.
It's really interesting because if you scroll through our Instagram, you see all of these artists, holding up Narcan.
Yeah.
But I guess what people don't know behind the scenes, it's not like we're taking selfies with these folks. No, we don't. We don't need all that. But we do go meet them.
Yeah.
You and I go meet them in person, and we talk to them before we take those photos, and we have conversations with them, their crew, their managers, and we end up having these conversations about how important this is to them.
Yeah.
And it's for this brevity of reasons. And they're some of the coolest conversations because for two reasons, it's such a breath of fresh air, pure oxygen to hear somebody just say I care so much, I'm willing to put this out there.
Yeah.
But also, it's really nice when you find out that someone who you look up to so much, someone whose music has meant so much to you, is also every bit as good as you would have hoped that they would be.
Yeah.
Because we hear, the news, whatever, they want to print or post the most salacious things about artists and make these I don't know, hurl these accusations about how precious they are and all of that. And that's honestly not the case in my learning. I am by no means a music industry expert, but I have met these folks and talked to them and hung out, and they invite me in their trailers and offer me the fancy water that they get. I'm actually picturing in my mind when I went into Interpol's trailer and he opened the fridge and they had every single brand of bottled water in the fridge, and I'm just what in the fuck?
That is a sign that you've made it. That's my dream come true. My hope that this podcast does well, and then we can just have a fridge full of fancy water.
I hope Brad listens to this because he'll remember that exact same thing.
Okay, well, Perry, thank you so much. I will let you to get back to your law homework, and yeah, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and please come back for more when we talk to real musicians. Bye, Perry.
Hi.